Do you need to create a new user in Oracle but get constant error messages? I'll guide you through this process and help you resolve the common errors. Why would you need to create a new user? You may want to assign unique access to certain people or applications. You may want to have more control over the database permissions. It's also a good idea to not use the SYS account, as this is an admin account and it's too easy to mess something up on the database. With a new user, you'll have a clean account that you can use for your own database objects. Let's get started. To create a new user, you'll have to log into the pluggable database, create the user, give it permissions, and then log in with the new user. Let me explain what this means, why you're probably getting errors, and then we'll go through this step by step. Since Oracle 12c was released, all versions of Oracle have come with this concept of a container database and a pluggable database. In its simplest terms, a container database is like an admin area, and a pluggable database is like the real database where applications store their data. As a developer or data analyst, you'll do almost all of your work in one of these pluggable databases. Why does this matter? Because there are two types of users, a common user and a local user. A common user is created on the container database and is used to manage the pluggable databases and other admin tasks. A local user is for people and applications to access the pluggable database, create tables, store data, and run queries. We want to use a local user. This is important to know because if you get an error when creating a user in Oracle, it's most likely because you're creating a common user on a pluggable database or a local user on a container database, both of which are not the way to go. Let's see how we can create a user the right way. So we want a local user on our pluggable database. First, we need to log into a user that has the privileges to create other users. This is most likely the SYS account. I'm using an editor called DataGrip here, but you can use any editor you like, such as SQL Developer. I'll connect to the Oracle pluggable database here. We can see it's a pluggable database as it has the name ORCL PDB1, which is the name for my installation of Oracle. The container database is called ORCL CDB. So I've now logged in as the SYS user, which we can see here. Let's create a user. We write the create user command here and give it a password. Ideally, your password will be more complex, but I'll keep it simple just for this demo. We run this command and the user is created. Now, a new user by default can't really do much. It can't even log into the database. To log in, it needs to have a privilege called create session. So we'll need to grant this privilege to our new Tony Stark user. We run this grant statement which will give the create session privilege to this user. We can see this was successful. Now that we have our new user, let's connect to the database. I'll create a new connection. I'll enter all of my connection details here, which is a host of localhost, the user of Tony Stark, the password of Iron Man, and the service name of the pluggable database, which is ORCL PDB1. Then I can click Test Connection, which is successful. So far so good. I'll save this connection. Then we'll connect to the database using this connection. We're now connected. This seems to have worked. I'll run a simple query to see if it is okay. I'll run this sysdate function which shows the current date, which we can see here is 11th of November 2024. So that's how we create a new user on an Oracle database. You can get many different issues when you're trying to create a user. I'll show you a few of them and explain why they happen. First, what happens if we don't give the new user the create session privilege? I'll go back to the SYS user and create a new user. We have a new user called Steve Rogers. Now let's set up a connection for it. I enter the details of the new user and the database. Then I'll click Test Connection. However, we get an error here which says user Steve Rogers lacks create session privilege, logon denied. This is expected. We can't log into the database without this create session privilege, and we deliberately didn't give this user this privilege. So I just wanted to show you what would happen in this scenario. Here is another issue. We create a connection using the Tony Stark user that was working for us. However, instead of selecting the role of default, we provide the role of SYSDBA, which is what we used for the SYS user. In SQL Developer, there's a drop-down for this, but in DataGrip, we add it to the username field. We do this and click Test, but we get an error that says Aura 01017, invalid username or password, logon denied. Here's the thing with these error messages, they aren't that helpful. We're actually getting this error because we can't use this role with this user. The username and password are actually correct, but we need to use the default role. So if you're connecting to a pluggable database with a user and you're positive the password is correct, but you have selected the role of SYSDBA or some other role, then you'll get this error. Change the role and it should work. What happens if we try to use our Tony Stark user, which we created on the pluggable database, and connect to the container database? We can create the new connection with the same details as earlier for Tony Stark. For the service name, I'll specify the name of SYSDBA, which is our container database. When I click Test, I get an error message, which is the same as before, invalid username or password, logon denied. So even though our username is correct and the password is correct, we get this error because we are connecting to the container database with the user we created on the pluggable database. There's no mention in the error about creating this on the wrong database, but that's what the issue is. So if you're getting this error, this may be another reason. Another issue you might find starts with logging into the container database. We're logged in. Let's create a user. We'll create a user for Natasha Romanoff. We run this command, but we get an error. It says invalid common user or role name. We get this error because we are connected to the container database and therefore the user being created is a common user. However, common users need to have a prefix of C ##. So if you get this error about an invalid common user or role name, then it's because you're connected to the container database and you'll most likely want to connect to the pluggable database instead. What if we put that prefix in front of the username and created it? I can do this and then run the command. This is successful. Then we grant the create session privileges to this user. This is also successful. Let's now create a new connection. I'll enter the user of C ## Natasha Romanoff and the password. The service name is also the pluggable database of ORCL PDB1. The connection is now ready. Click Test. I'll get an error which says user C ## Natasha Romanoff lacks the create session privilege, logon denied. This seems strange because we just gave it the create session privilege. However, the privileges were created for the container database, not the pluggable database which we are logging into. So we get this error because we don't have these privileges on this database. We could log in as a sys user, then give it permissions, but it's still a common user which we created on the container database, so we won't be able to do much. The correct process to follow to create a new user on an Oracle database is: Step 1, log into the pluggable database as the sys user or a user with create user privileges. Step 2, create your new user. Step 3, grant the create session privilege to your new user. And Step 4, connect as your new user to the pluggable database. If you followed a different process, such as using the container database at different points, you'll get different outcomes as we've seen in this video. The concept of a container database and pluggable database can be confusing if you're new to Oracle. You'll want to watch this video here to learn more about container and pluggable databases and how to work with them. Thanks for watching.